everyone, my name is Asia Langley and welcome to the SE300 News. Today, my team and I will be discussing candidate solutions for the refugee crisis in Europe. These solutions will be delivered to the Director of Policy for the U.S. and European Union Command. Conflict in Syria has made for a complex situation for European countries. While mitigating xenophobic tendencies of their civilian population, European governments must also allocate resources to the incoming refugees. In 2017, 205,000 illegal border crossings were detected in European Union states. In addition, 443,000 asylum applications were accepted in these same countries. The main concern with the increased number of refugees is the belief that the more refugees that come in, the more terrorism that will occur. Last year, there were 142 reported terrorist attacks in these countries. Hypothetically, if all of these attacks were done by radicalized refugees, this means that only 0.002% of the refugee population were radicalized and terrorists. With this, the UCOM director needs to present a framework of policies in order to help mitigate the risk of refugee radicalization, all in line with what host countries are willing to follow. Next, I'll be sending it over to Zach and Joe for further analysis on the issue.
Thank you, Adrian. So, to increase viewers' understanding of the problem and the process we use to make our candidate solutions, we're going to go into our functional hierarchy real quick. So at the top we have our objective, that the problem we're trying to fulfill, followed by our objective functions, the functions, and the requirements. Now the functional hierarchy operates sort of like a pyramid. You must fulfill the requirements to fulfill the objective functions, to fulfill the functions of the objective functions, and finally to fulfill the objective. If you take one block out of the pyramid, the whole thing falls down. So, for example, with increased border security, that's got functions of improved vetting process with the requirements of better ID of potential terrorists, as well as technology for background checks and psychological tests of the refugees. The other function would be to prevent entrance from outside ports, which requires increased manpower at the borders.
We're going through the same process again for integrating refugees, utilizing education, as well as enhancing the general living of these refugees. Again, to get our pyramid example or analogy, and then hopefully solve the crisis at hand.
Now that the problem has been properly framed, we will now provide highlights of the decision-making process we utilize to generate our candidate solutions. So here we have Zwicky's morphological box, a box where we can look at our objective functions and look at possible candidate solutions to fulfill those objective functions. So here, for example, under increased border security, we could go with improve the screening process with background checks and psychological tests of the refugees, or we could go with the increased personnel at the borders, including military. And finally, we could increase the frequency of checkpoints along the border. This general process follows throughout the other two of our objective functions. With integrate refugees utilizing education, we could provide schooling with language classes K through 12 and free sports and other programs like your local school system. We could provide European citizen classes or vocational classes for the adults to give them a sense of purpose and keep them occupied. Finally, we could increase the job and internship opportunities to the refugees in their local communities. In the enhancing of general living, we could provide job finding assistance, housing and cost of living assistance, as well as increased transportation outlets to get the refugees out of their shelters.
Next, we'll be going over the feasibility screening process that we utilize in order to ensure that all of the candidate solutions that we theorized will actually be successful in mitigating the crisis. So basically we took our value functions, or value measures, and we predicted the amount of effect it would have, each candidate solution would have on our value measures. So for instance, alternative one, again we'll go over our candidate solutions nearing the end, was for number of terrorists, it decreased them, number of terrorist networks, it decreased it, and basically we went through all of our value functions, and either side was a no-go, which one then we took it off the chart, or go, allowing us to keep it as a candidate solution. This just allowed us to cut down the amount of alternatives we presented to UCOM, and it allowed us to ensure that any candidate solution we did present was successful.
So finally, we have our candidate solutions. One possible candidate solution was to improve the screening process with background checks and psychological tests, provide schooling with language classes to K through 12 children, and free sports and other programs, as well as provide job finding assistance. Another possible solution was to increase personnel at the borders, including the military, provide European citizen classes and vocational classes for the adults, as well as provide housing and cost of living assistance. Thirdly, we can increase the frequency of checkpoints along the borders, increase job and internship opportunities, as well as increase the transportation outlets to the refugees.
Next, our fourth candidate solution would be improving the screening process, including a series of testing. We have the European citizen classes and vocational classes for adults, and increased transportation outlets to allow these refugees to get around the city with ease. And on our final, and we think with our professional opinion, our most valuable candidate solution would be our fifth one. It would be increasing personnel at the borders, including the military. It would also include schooling for the youth and adults, including language classes and other extracurricular activities to kind of have the refugees value their time. And then housing and cost of living assistance to allow them to integrate into society with greater ease.
And then because the biggest question on everyone's mind is, how much is this going to cost? We've done some cost analysis for the director. For one of our objective functions of increasing personnel at the border, including potentially the military, we looked at the cost of providing the military personnel and the police force necessary to man the borders. We calculated with factors such as the average military salary, the average police officer salary in Europe, and we multiplied that by the amount of time we want this program to last, as well as how many people we can generally estimate would make up the military personnel and the police force to guard these borders. And after all those calculations, we came up with a cost of about $3.5 billion to the country.
We also utilized a similar process for the schooling and language classes and other extracurricular activities. Basically, we determined that teachers and coaches kind of were the base of this operation. And so, just like we did with increased personnel at the borders, we took the average salary, we took how many personnel we wanted to utilize to increase to the number that's optimal, and as well as, again, how many years we wanted this program to be in place. Ultimately, getting us somewhere around $575 million for this one solution.
And finally, using the same process for European citizen classes for the adults, we came up with about $3.1 billion.
And for a job finding assistance program, we, again, using the same process, we estimated around $7.5 billion.
And for about a grand total of $13 billion for the country.
Thank you, Joe and Zach, for laying down some analysis on the situation at hand. And thank you, viewers, for viewing SE300 News. I hope you enjoyed that segment and have a great day.